Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into fascinating topics and extract those invaluable nuggets of knowledge and insight. Today, we're taking on nothing less than the birthplace of civilization itself, the ancient Near East.
It's a vast and complex subject, for sure, stretching across millennia, encompassing incredibly diverse cultures. Our goal is really to help you navigate this ancient world, revealing surprising connections and profound facts that make it feel remarkably relevant to our lives today.
Our mission today is to unpack a rich collection of sources. We've got scholarly encyclopedias, academic essays on cuneiform texts, even educational materials from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We'll be exploring the foundations of Mesopotamian society, the incredible power of their written word, and how their art expressed everything from daily life to divine beliefs.
We'll uncover how geography didn't just provide a setting, but actively shaped their destiny, and what ancient letters can reveal about everyday anxieties and grand political maneuvers, and the sheer sophistication behind their art and craftsmanship. Get ready to maybe rethink what you thought you knew about this pivotal era.
Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1. Unearthing the Past. Foundations of ancient Near Eastern civilization. Let's start with the basics, the land itself, the cradle of civilization, geography, and its impact. When we talk about civilization's origins, why did it take root in such a challenging, yet ultimately fertile environment? What was it about this landscape that fostered such dramatic innovation?
Well, that's the fascinating paradox, isn't it? The truly profound insight here is that civilization in the ancient Near East wasn't born out of ease. Not at all. It came from a relentless, ingenious struggle against a harsh environment. Their very survival hinged on mastering water, which paradoxically became the ultimate catalyst for their complex societies and groundbreaking innovations.
Well, necessity really was the mother of invention here.
Absolutely. And the ancient Near East, you see, was a colossal territory. It stretched from modern-day Turkey all the way to parts of Pakistan and India, and from the Caucasus Mountains down to the Arabian Peninsula.
So it's much bigger than just Mesopotamia, which is what most people probably picture.
Exactly. Mesopotamia is central, especially the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates, but the region was enormous, and this immense area held an astonishing variety of ecological environments. You had the rich alluvial plains of river valleys, sure, but also coastlines, high mountain steppes, vast deserts, and scattered oases.
Wow.
This diverse geography, coupled with a mix of foundational ethnicities like the Sumerians and later empires like the Assyrians and Babylonians, meant a history that's anything but simple to summarize.
It sounds like life there was, as one source put it, precariously balanced between abundance and catastrophe. That's a powerful image.
That phrase perfectly captures it. The interaction of these environmental conditions, the unpredictable nature of the rivers, the constant threat of seasonal floods, the encroaching desert, it directly influenced every aspect of their society.
So the landscape wasn't just a backdrop.
Not at all. It was an active participant. These pressures shaped settlement patterns, determined the size and skill sets needed for their labor force, dictated where capital investments would go, even influenced the economic characteristics of each political unit.
Right.
Because their survival literally depended on managing these conditions, they were driven to innovate at an astonishing pace. They learned to dig intricate canals and erect dikes to guide and store precious water. They also discovered and domesticated many plants and animals, effectively transforming Mesopotamia into a livable, productive landscape.
So this constant struggle against a challenging environment forced them to develop sophisticated systems, organization, technology.
Exactly, laying the groundwork for what we now recognize as civilization.
Okay, so that's the setting. But how do we actually know all this? To understand such an ancient world, we rely on clues, don't we? This brings us to uncovering the secrets, the role of archaeology. How do archaeologists become these incredible time travelers, piecing together history layer by layer?
Well, the profound lesson we learn from archaeology in this region is that our knowledge is fundamentally dynamic. It's always changing. Every new discovery is incredibly significant because so much has simply disappeared due to challenging preservation conditions. So our understanding is constantly being refined, sometimes completely reshaped.
Makes sense.
Our entire understanding of these ancient Near Eastern peoples, their art, architecture, religious beliefs, literature, technological skills, it comes predominantly from archaeology, a discipline that really took off in the modern era in the 19th century.
And initially, the big hurdle was just reading what they wrote, right?
Exactly. Early on, a major focus was simply deciphering the ancient cuneiform languages.
I recall hearing about a critical breakthrough, Like finding a Rosetta Stone for a whole new world of texts. Was there a specific moment that really opened the floodgates?
Absolutely. The trilingual inscription at Behistun in the Zagros Mountains, that was absolutely key. It was monumental in unlocking Akkadian by the late 1850s, allowing scholars to read vast numbers of texts for the first time. Once they could read, the floodgates truly opened.
So how does the actual digging work? How do they find things?
Well, ancient cities in this region were typically built of mud bricks, not as durable as stone, obviously. So each generation would repair or rebuild their settlements directly on top of the rubble of earlier structures. Over centuries, this created accumulated layers of debris, forming low hills or mounds.
The tells.
Exactly. When these cities were eventually abandoned, natural erosion would wear them down further, making them resemble natural hills. These mounds are known by various regional names like tells, hoyuks, chogas, tepas.
So archaeologists don't just dig anywhere. They look for these tells, these man-made hills, knowing that underneath lies a buried city or layers of cities.
Precisely. They excavate these tells, and a crucial technique they use is stratigraphy, which is essentially the careful recording of these debris layers.
Layer by layer.
Right. Objects found in lower strata are inherently older than those in higher, more recent layers. This gives them a basic time sequence for their findings, like reading a book layer by layer with the oldest chapters at the bottom.
And pottery is key for dating, I understand.
Incredibly valuable. It was used by almost every culture, at every level of society, and its styles and shapes evolved constantly. So even broken pottery fragments, potsherds, can provide an accurate chronological framework.
Wow.
We have examples like at Tel Gürtel in southeastern Turkey, occupied from the Neolithic all the way to Byzantine Seljuk times. Archaeologists meticulously documented these layers. Similarly, excavations at Nippur in modern Iraq revealed levels of a temple dedicated to the goddess Inanna, clearly illustrating the stratigraphic process with white labels marking the different levels.
And it's fascinating how fragile so much of their material culture was compared to, say, ancient Egypt. We always see those perfectly preserved mummies and papyrus scrolls. But that's not the norm for Mesopotamia, is it?
You've hit on a critical point. The acidic soil and damp climate of much of the modern Middle East mean that organic materials like wood and textiles just haven't been preserved, not like in the dry desert conditions of Egypt.
So we're missing a lot.
We are. This leads to what our sources call a misleading impression of scarcity. The relatively few objects that survive from the ancient Near East only hint at the true richness and diversity of these cultures. Every new find is therefore immensely significant. It continuously refines and sometimes completely reshapes our understanding. It's an ongoing process of discovery and reinterpretation, underscoring the dynamic nature of historical scholarship.
Okay, that makes sense. Given these challenges and the rich archaeological finds, how did these societies truly thrive economically? It sounds like they were dealing with some pretty big hurdles beyond just farming. Let's look at section 1.3, the measure of civilization, economic and political drivers.
Yeah, one key takeaway here is the remarkable economic resilience of Mesopotamia. Despite facing immense environmental pressures, they developed incredibly sophisticated systems for resource management and trade. They demonstrated an early form of economic integration rooted deeply in their unique landscapes. This highlights just how intertwined their survival was with their ability to innovate economically.
And how do we know about their economy? Mostly from texts.
Primarily, yes. Our main source for understanding ancient Mesopotamian economic life comes from economic texts. Countless clay tablets detailing rations given to men, women, even children working for the state or temple. These records show that early entrepreneurs, as we might call them, were quite cautious about investing in land for cereal production, barley and wheat.
Why was that? Seems like a basic investment.
Well, they only did so in times of peace and security, largely because of the huge labor and manpower required for water supply, field work, and processing the crops in that environment. It was risky.
That makes sense. Farming barley or wheat in such a difficult, unpredictable environment would be a massive, risky undertaking.
Exactly. So instead, these entrepreneurs often preferred to support date growing, which might have been less labor-intensive, or if larger capital was involved, they would join corporations of overland traders.
The traders. They sound crucial.
Absolutely crucial. They maintained these thin but tenacious networks of trade contacts, not just between different political units within Mesopotamia itself, but also with foreign regions. These networks furnished essential raw materials that Mesopotamia lacked, like stone and metal, or luxury items such as spices, timber, and even slaves.
So trade wasn't just for luxury goods. It was fundamental for acquiring essential materials they couldn't produce themselves. And who was typically driving this extensive trade? Individuals or larger groups.
It was primarily the big institutions that had enough surplus and organized labor to do so. Temple administrators and rulers were the ones who actively stimulated this overland trade.
Because they had the resources.
Right. They could produce goods in their workshops, often staffed by serfs, like textiles, to exchange for these raw materials. Their stores were also large enough to withstand crop failures, giving them the stability to engage in long-distance trade. For instance, only cities like Mari or effective trading tribes could rely on imported barley because they possessed the silver needed to make such trade lucrative for the producers and merchants involved.
So the landscape really shaped the economy of each place.
Definitely. It highlights how the dominant landscape in a particular locale tended to give that political unit its unique economic characteristics, influencing the size and scale of its labor force, the type of capital investment, and the relationships between landowners and workers.
That sounds incredibly dynamic.
It was. We even have letters, like one from Mernuglorodad, detailing a town abandoned for lack of water, with the desperate lament, "Where should I go to live next year?" This vividly demonstrates the precarious balance they faced and the direct impact of environmental conditions on their economic and social structures.
Incredible. Okay, let's move into section 2, the voices of the past. Cuneiform messages. It's hard to imagine a world before writing, and then suddenly, this explosion of record-keeping. It wasn't just for grand narratives or epic poems at first, was it? It sounds like it was all about the practicalities of business.
That's right. The profound lesson we uncover here is that the aha moment for writing didn't come from philosophical contemplation, but from the very practical challenges of managing complex urban economies. This highlights how fundamental logistical needs can spark revolutionary intellectual leaps.
So where did it start?
The world's first cities, and crucially, the first written documents, emerged from southern Mesopotamia. Think of places like Uruk in southwestern Iran, ancient Elam. This was in the late 4th and early 3rd millennia BC. And this development actually slightly predated the Egyptian writing system, which is a remarkable fact.
So it wasn't some sage sitting down to write down grand thoughts. It was more like an ancient accountant trying to keep track of grain and sheep.
That's exactly it. The primary driver for this groundbreaking innovation was the overwhelming need to record economic transactions. Writing developed hand in hand with urbanization and the absolute necessity for storing and managing agricultural surplus.
And what did it look like initially? Just pictures?
Pretty much. Early writing, which we call proto-cuneiform, used pictographs, literally pictures drawn into soft clay tablets. We have examples, like a proto-cuneiform tablet from the Jemdet Naz period, that clearly shows these early images. Numerical symbols were initially represented by simple, circular impressions in the clay.
So a drawing of a cow might mean cow, but also one cow or a unit of cattle. Still very direct and visual.
Yes. Initially, it was very logographic, meaning each sign often represented a whole word or concept, but by about 2600 BC, this proto-cuneiform system evolved. It was replaced by standardized, more abstract wedge-shaped signs. This is what we call cuneiform, from the Latin word for wedge-shaped.
Okay, the classic image people have of Mesopotamian writing.
Right. It was typically written by pressing a bevel-ended reed into those soft clay tablets, and interestingly, it was usually read from left to right. This sophisticated system became incredibly widespread throughout the region and remained in use for an astonishingly long time, right up until the 1st century AD.
Wow, thousands of years.
Thousands. Most of these tablets were pillow-shaped, slightly convex on both faces, and small enough to comfortably fit in the palm of your hand.
Convenient.
And some incredibly valuable documents were even sealed inside clay envelopes to prevent tampering. The seal impressions on the envelope served as signatures or witness marks, much like how a modern signature or stamp would validate a document.
Showing the immediate practical application and legal importance of this new technology. Fascinating. Okay, so that's the script itself. What about the people who used it? The scribes, languages, and the breadth of cuneiform literature. It sounds like these scribes were not just clerks. They were the guardians of history, law, and even divine communication. What kind of stories did they tell, and what mundane details did they capture?
Well, the sheer scope of cuneiform literature reveals a society deeply concerned with order, both earthly and cosmic. From managing a bustling city to interpreting divine warnings, writing was the indispensable tool that gave structure and meaning to their entire world.
And it wasn't easy to learn, I imagine.
Not at all. Scribes underwent rigorous and lengthy training to master writing the two major ancient Near Eastern languages, Sumerian and Akkadian. It's important to note that despite both using cuneiform, they were linguistically unrelated. A bit like English and Chinese today, yet they shared a script.
Wow. How did that work?
Hundreds of signs existed, and many could be read either logographically as a whole word or phonetically as a sound or group of sounds.
That dual function must have made it incredibly flexible, especially as their societies grew more complex and interacted with different language groups.
Absolutely. As cuneiform spread, phonetic signs became crucial to express names and grammatical features in languages other than Sumerian, which was vital in such a linguistically diverse region.
And one language became dominant for writing.
Yes, Akkadian, which is a Semitic language, eventually became the preferred lingua franca for official written communications, even after it was no longer spoken as an everyday language. It's a bit like how Latin functioned in the medieval Catholic Church, a formal language for official and scholarly use.
Right.
And the richness and sheer volume of surviving cuneiform texts is truly overwhelming. It offers an unparalleled glimpse into virtually every aspect of their society. The very act of writing, of knitting knowledge a tangible form, profoundly shaped their conceptual framework.
And this isn't just dry administrative text, right? We're talking about foundational works of literature that shaped human thought.
Indeed, Mesopotamian literature gave us the earliest recorded epic, the Epic of Gilgamesh, a story that still resonates with themes of friendship, mortality, the search for meaning.
Still read today?
Absolutely. They also produced the first poetry, including surprising examples of love songs, and incredibly, we have the first text by a named author, a series of hymns by Enheduanna.
And Enheduanna, who was she?
She was the high priestess of the moon god Nana in Ur during the time of the Akkadian Empire, making her arguably the first known author in history.
That's incredible. What else did they write about?
Beyond literature, the oldest known laws and legal decisions were inscribed by kings, most famously Hammurabi of Babylon. His famous code wasn't just a strict law book, it was a public monument, a demonstration of his just leadership.
More propaganda.
In a way, yes. They also meticulously recorded rituals in detail, even down to the care and feeding of cult images, which we'll talk more about later. And fascinatingly, phenomena like solar or lunar eclipses were meticulously recorded in omen texts and treated as coded messages from the gods, which trained priests would then interpret.
Wow. So writing was deeply integrated into their daily lives, their governance, their spirituality, their efforts to understand the cosmos. Okay, let's get even more personal. Immediate insights. The world through ancient letters. These letters sound amazing. They give us such a vivid, almost gossipy peek into ancient life, proving that some things, like bureaucracy and debt collection, are truly timeless. What kind of immediate personal stories did they reveal?
Oh, they're fantastic. These intimate details, even something as small as the dislikes of a string of beads, they profoundly humanize the civilization, often only known to us through grand monuments and royal decrees. They show a society far more complex, relatable, and nuanced than we might imagine.
How so? How are they different from other texts?
Well, the translations of these ancient letters, whether official, business, or private, provide uniquely immediate insights. Unlike more formal texts like ration lists or legal documents, which are often highly stylized and formulaic. Letters allowed for a less stringent style. They often reflected more unstable or less well-defined situations where the standard formulas didn't quite fit.
So they're like finding someone's personal diary or email chain from thousands of years ago. A truly direct window. What kind of stories did these letters actually tell us?
They tell us everything from the mundane to the dramatic. The scope is incredible. For instance, from the old Akkadian period, we get a glimpse into deeply personal demands. There's one called a solemn warning. Iskundagan demands an oath from Puzur Ishtar not to eat, drink, or even sit until they meet face to face.
Wow, intense.
Incredibly intense, almost theatrical. Another, from the same period, vividly captures the anxieties of living in a time of military threat. Before the invasion of the Guti, Iskundagan sternly warns Lugalra to cultivate fields and watch cattle, flatly refusing any further compensation for Guti damages.
A stark reminder of the practicalities of survival in a volatile world. What about the everyday frustrations we can still relate to?
Oh, those abound. From the old Babylonian letters, we have one titled, Fighting the Bureaucracy.
I can relate already.
Right. This details the town of Habuz complaining about being forced to do corvée work, that's compulsory unpaid labor for the state, that wasn't actually their obligation. This led to a royal exemption order, a clear example of ancient red tape and bureaucratic struggle.
Amazing.
But then there's a letter from the same period titled Daily Life, which offers a remarkably personal request. Someone asks a correspondent to get me a fine string full of beads to be worn around the head sent by carrier, with explicit instructions to seal it and ensure the young man delivering it doesn't see it. And then, the kicker, if I see it and dislike it, I shall send it back.
That's incredible. You can practically hear the voice behind that request. Ancient sass. Any more dramatic ones?
The letters from Mari offer some particularly stark insights into the realities of their world. One details critical water management issues, like repairing a demolished weir, highlighting their constant struggle with the environment. In a chilling reminder of their legal system, Hamastemar, the governor of Turka, defends himself against accusations of taking native slaves or debts, declaring basically, if you are slaves, if you are in debt, or if there is either a lawsuit of the palace or a lawsuit of Kibri Dagan pending against you, I shall have no mercy on you and shall extradite you.
Yikes. No messing around.
None at all. There's even one detailing the discovery of a 1-year-old child's mutilated body.
Oh, wow.
So these letters truly provide an immediate, unfiltered window into the daily realities, concerns, and complexities of Mesopotamian society, far beyond what grand monuments alone could convey.
Absolutely. But translating these must be difficult. So even with all these amazing discoveries, piecing together the true story is like an ongoing detective novel. It's not just about finding the text, but figuring out what they really mean. Section 2.4. The challenges of translation. What are the biggest hurdles for modern scholars?
Well, the profound lesson we learn from the challenges of translation is that our understanding of ancient Mesopotamia is fundamentally dynamic. It's not a fixed picture. It's one that is constantly being refined and challenged by new discoveries, emphasizing the collaborative and iterative nature of historical scholarship.
So what makes Akkadian, for example, so tough?
Translating from Akkadian presents two main difficulties. First, there's the specific nature of the documentation itself. These aren't always straightforward narrative texts, as we've seen with the letters. And second, Akkadian is a dead language, meaning there are no native speakers to consult.
That's a huge challenge. It's not like you can call someone up and ask, hey, what did you really mean by this phrase?
Exactly. While the phonetics and stress of the spoken language are hard to reconstruct, the written script, the graphics, generally do a good job of reflecting morphology, vocabulary, and syntax, so we can read it. However, the constantly increasing corpus of linguistic material available in Akkadian, while exciting for discovery, paradoxically creates a serious drawback by its sheer rate of accumulation.
How can more information be a drawback? That seems counterintuitive.
It's because the exact meaning of a word in a specific context, or the precise function of a grammatical form or a syntactical structure, cannot be tested with a native informant. Confirmation relies solely on new evidence becoming available that either proves an interpretation correct or incorrect.
I see. So every new discovery could potentially change everything.
Potentially, yes, or confirm things. This means that every new tablet, every new text can potentially overturn previous assumptions or confirm existing theories.
So it creates a constant instability in our knowledge. Our understanding is always evolving, never truly finalized.
Precisely. This state of affairs gives a degree of instability to both the extent and the depth of our knowledge of Akkadian, and in turn to our understanding of the entire civilization of Mesopotamia. It's a very humbling process for scholars.
It sounds like it.
The challenge is eloquently likened to a passage from the biblical book of Ezekiel. Accumulating more and more information will therefore never automatically provide the bridge to a fuller understanding of these texts, nor will it ever produce the sinews and flesh to cover the dry bones.
Meaning data alone isn't enough.
Exactly. The point being, simply having more data isn't enough. It requires critical evaluation, profound intellectual initiative, and creative thinking to truly make these bones live again. It's an ongoing, active process of interpretation, not just a passive collection of facts.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and look at their world through another lens. Section 3. Art as a window into ancient Mesopotamian life, beliefs, and power. It's easy to get lost in the beauty of these objects, but they weren't just decorative. They were powerful tools, right? Almost like a form of communication embedded in stone or clay. What was their ultimate purpose?
Right. The core takeaway here is that for the ancients, art wasn't just something to look at, it was a powerful, functional tool, often literally believed to be alive and capable of effecting change through ritual. This elevates its significance far beyond our modern concept of art for art's sake.
So no art for art's sake.
Not really, no. Unlike our contemporary view, ancient Near Eastern art was fundamentally functional and deeply imbued with meaning. Descriptions of their art typically focused on the expert craftsmanship and technical skill involved, rather than on inventive concept or individual creativity.
So they valued the skill, the technique.
Highly. Artisans were highly valued as skilled craftspeople and technicians, and their expertise was often passed down through families, making it a revered hereditary profession.
So the person who carved a magnificent relief or cast a bronze statue wasn't just an artist, but someone with a deep understanding of ritual or even magical properties.
Exactly. They were often considered ritual specialists in their own right. Texts describe specific ceremonies, such as the eye and mouth opening of a statue.
What's that?
It was a ritual where the craftsperson would carve the final details according to specific procedures, believing that this process actually brought the statue to life.
Wow.
This shows how deeply intertwined art, function, and belief were for them. Art served as a primary means of expressing values, beliefs, and ideas within their society.
That's a profound difference from our modern view of art. It wasn't just something to look at. It was an active participant in their world.
And this art reflected a vast and diversified tapestry of peoples and languages. While styles certainly varied greatly across different regions and time periods, sometimes flourishing simultaneously, there was also a remarkable continuity. Concepts like the many roles of the ruler and aesthetic choices, such as the use of contrasting colored materials, are evident from the 4th millennium BC and remained constant for millennia.
And ideas spread through trade.
Definitely. Artistic influences circulated widely across Mesopotamia, Iran, Syria, the Levant, Anatolia, and even as far as the Indus Valley, due to constant interaction between cultures, largely through trade. This led to a rich, varied artistic output.
I understand the earliest sculptures were of humans and animals. Were there any particular forms that were especially common or significant?
Yes, the earliest three-dimensional sculpture, human and animal figurines made of clay, appeared way back in the Neolithic period, around the 8th to 7th millennia BC. By the 4th millennium BC, royal or divine figures were clearly being represented.
And relief was common.
Predominant, yes. Relief sculpture, where the image projects from a two-dimensional background, was the main form of artistic expression. This was created in various materials like stone, wood, ivory, metal, and clay, and used in architecture, on commemorative monuments, plaques, and even on jewelry.
And the seals.
Ah, yes. A unique and ubiquitous form was the cylinder and stamp seals. These small cylindrical or stamp-shaped objects were engraved in intaglio, meaning the design was cut into the surface so that when pressed or rolled into soft clay, they created a raised impression.
Like a rolling signature. So these weren't just pretty objects, they were practical official tools.
Precisely. They served as unique signatures and were used to mark information with official approval. Seals often named their owners and their professions and were decorated with images that held special significance.
People still find them fascinating today, right?
Absolutely. A striking example of their enduring fascination, even in modern times, is Lady Layard's jewelry from the 19th century AD.
Who was she?
She was the wife of Austin Henry Layard, the first excavator of Nimrod. He had jewelry created for her using ancient cylinder and stamp seals he'd found. She wore these ancient artifacts with evident pride, demonstrating how these functional yet beautiful objects transcended time.
Amazing. Okay, let's focus on one major theme in their art. The royal image, projecting power and piety. It's clear that ancient rulers were masters of propaganda. They weren't just showing their face, they were crafting a powerful brand. What did they want people to believe about them, and how did they do it visually?
Yeah, propaganda is a good word for it. The consistent message across diverse periods and empires is a powerful testament to their foresight. It wasn't about capturing a momentary likeness, but about embodying timeless virtues. This allowed their image to function not just as a record, but as a continuous affirmation of their legitimacy and divine connection.
How so?
Depictions of rulers in the ancient Near East consistently emphasized ideal characteristics rather than naturalistic appearances. Their images were designed to showcase qualities essential for effective leadership: piety and might.
So not a portrait of what they looked like, but what they represented: strength, wisdom.
Exactly. Rulers in pious attitudes, often shown with clasped hands and serene gazes, were typically rendered in sculpture in the round. These statues were then placed in temples to represent their eternal presence, constantly interceding with the gods on behalf of their people.
Like a stand-in for the ruler in the temple.
Sort of, yes. And more dynamic acts of piety, such as participating in rituals or overseeing building projects, were often depicted in relief sculpture, where the narrative action could unfold across the surface.
And what about their might? How did they convey that raw power and strength?
Images illustrating a ruler's might were incredibly common and often dramatic. You'd see them victorious over vanquished enemies or famously hunting lions. These scenes appeared on large palace reliefs, metal vessels, and even on tiny cylinder seals.
Lions seem key.
Very key. Royal attributes were also very distinctive and consistent. Sexual headdresses, prominent beards and mustaches, exaggerated size and muscular physiques, and long, elaborate garments. They often carried symbols of rulership, like a bow or a sword.
I'm picturing images like Hammurabi with a rod and ring. What was the significance of that particular symbol?
That's a perfect example from his famous stele. The rod and ring symbol, explicitly handed to Hammurabi by the sun god Shamash, was a clear statement of the divine origin of his power. It explicitly linked his authority to dispense justice and create order directly to the gods.
Got it. And the lion hunting.
Lions were particularly associated with rulers, symbolizing strength and ferocity. You see the ruler grappling with or slaughtering lions, thereby claiming the animal's power for themselves. This wasn't just symbolism, it was a powerful projection of immense personal and divine authority.
So it wasn't just symbolism, it was a projection of immense personal power. It showed they could master chaos.
Precisely. Consider Gudea, a Neo-Sumerian ruler from around 2090 BC. He's depicted with an extremely well-muscled right arm, which was a visual reference to his strong arm rule. The Akkadian king Naram-Sin is shown as the largest figure on his victory stele, wearing a horned crown, an attribute of divinity we'll come back to, and literally treading on his defeated enemies.
Very clear message there.
Unmistakable. Even things like enlarged ears in the head of a ruler from the early Bronze Age, which might seem like an individualized feature, could also signify wisdom, stemming from the idea of being wide-eared or a careful listener. These weren't intended to be naturalistic portraits, but rather idealizations, embodiments of strength, wisdom, and piety.
And these images weren't just for their contemporaries, were they? They were built to last, to send a message across generations.
Absolutely. The use of durable and precious materials like diorite or bronze was deliberate. Rulers wanted their images to last for many generations. They were acutely aware of the long-standing monuments of their predecessors.
Like Naram-Sin's stele.
Exactly. The steles of Hammurabi and Naram-Sin, for example, were publicly displayed for centuries. The fact that they were later taken as spoils of war by Elamite troops and carried off to their capital, Susa, nearly a millennium after Naram-Sin's reign, that clearly demonstrates their lasting power and symbolic significance even to conquerors. These were powerful living testaments to their rule.
Incredible. Okay, let's talk more about animals, section 3.3. Animals in ancient Near Eastern art, symbolism and interaction. It's amazing how central animals were to their world, not just as practical partners, but as powerful symbols infused with meaning. What did these animals tell them about themselves and their gods?
Yeah, the consistent use of certain animals across cultures and time periods highlights deeply ingrained beliefs about power, fertility, and protection. Art wasn't just reflecting their world, it was actively shaping their perception of the divine and the natural order.
How so?
Animals profoundly shaped the ancient Near Eastern world. They were partners in farming, property, prey, sometimes enemies, means of transport, entertainment, and even divine representatives. It's no surprise that many animals we know today, like dogs, sheep, goats, donkeys, pigs, and cats, were first domesticated here.
Right, Fertile Crescent.
Exactly. Interestingly, camels weren't common until the 1st centuries AD, contrary to what some might imagine from later depictions.
So their entire existence was intimately intertwined with the animal kingdom. How did that translate into their art?
Animal depictions in art were pervasive and highly symbolic, ranging from the purely practical to the deeply ceremonial. They embodied concepts of divinity, kingship, and fertility, and were used to decorate temple equipment, ritual objects, and votive gifts. You see fierce animals like bulls and lions often shown in combat, which might have embodied powerful opposing forces in nature.
And animals were linked to specific gods.
Often, yes. While the great gods were typically anthropomorphic, appearing in human form, powerful animals were frequently linked to specific deities. For example, the storm god Adad was associated with the bull, partly because the rumble of thunder was likened to the roar of a mighty bull.
So a bull didn't represent the god as an avatar, but rather symbolized the god's presence or power, or maybe both.
It's more like symbolizing the god's power or being an attribute. Animals were also depicted for their own inherent qualities of strength and fierceness, not exclusively as direct representations of gods. Then you have those fascinating composite creatures combining human and animal parts, like the human-headed winged lions and bulls often placed at palace entrances.
Lamassu.
Exactly, the lamassu. These were considered potent supernatural spirits functioning as protective figures. Sometimes they were depicted with 5 legs.
Right, so they look complete from the front and the side.
Precisely. A clever artistic solution to a viewing challenge as you approach them.
That's brilliant. Can you give us some specific examples that really illustrate their use of animal imagery?
Certainly. From the Proto-Elamite period, we have the kneeling bull holding a spouted vessel. It's a striking silver bowl, but it has a human pose and clothing. Experts believe this wasn't just a statue, but possibly a noisemaker used in ritual performance, showcasing the integration of animals into their active ceremonial life, not just visual art.
Fascinating. What else?
Another vivid example is the panel with striding lion from New Babylonian Babylon, made of vibrantly colored glazed brick. This powerful lion symbolizes Ishtar, the goddess of sexual love and war.
Ishtar again.
Yes, and these lion panels were used to protect the city's processional way during the New Year's festival. It's a fantastic example of art, animal symbolism, and religious function woven together for a public display.
Incredible colors.
Stunning. And for protective purposes, we see plaques in the form of Sphinx's bronze creatures with human heads, lion bodies, and added wings, which was a Near Eastern innovation, often symbolizing royal protection. This consistent use of animals underscores their fundamental role in both the practical and symbolic life of the ancient Near East.
Absolutely. Which brings us neatly to the divine itself. Section 3.4, communicating with the divine, gods, rituals, and beliefs. It sounds like the gods were everywhere, but also quite demanding. And this idea of a statue actually being the god is so different from how many of us think today. Can you elaborate on how that belief system functioned?
Right. The profound implication here is that the concept of the enlivened image fundamentally shaped their entire religious practice. This explains the elaborate care of cult statues and the immense power attributed to symbols and protective figures. For them, art wasn't just a representation, it was an active conduit to the divine.
So how did they view their gods generally?
Ancient Near Eastern spiritual beliefs were largely polytheistic. The pantheon was truly vast, listing over 3,000 deities, though their powers varied significantly. Most deities were anthropomorphic, meaning they were conceived in human terms, complete with families and needs mirroring those of humans.
So the gods had to eat, sleep, and needed care. That's quite a domestic arrangement for supreme beings.
Indeed. According to their mythology, humankind was actually created by the gods precisely to ease their burdens and provide them with daily care and food. Serve the gods.
Wow, so humans were basically created as servants.
In essence, yes. While great gods were worshipped by priests in grand temples, ordinary people often had personal gods, minor deities who played a kind of parental role, interceding on their behalf with the greater pantheon to ensure health and protection for their families.
Like a personal protector god.
Kind of, yes.
And cities had their own patron deities, linking their identity directly to a specific god or goddess, right?
Yes, absolutely. From as early as the 3rd millennium BC, cuneiform tablets show that gods and goddesses were strongly associated with specific cities. Each community worshipped its patron deity in the city's main temple, for instance, and Anashtar was worshipped in Uruk. A city's political strength was even linked to the prominence of its deity in the overall hierarchy of the gods, emphasizing the intertwined nature of religion and state.
And the cult statues themselves were incredibly important, not just as symbols, but as the actual presence of the deity.
Precisely. Cult statues were central to their worship. They were believed to embody the essence and power of the deities. These statues were treated with immense reverence. They were washed, dressed, given food and drink, and lavishly adorned with precious items like gold rings, pendants, and rosettes.
Like caring for a living being.
Exactly. This is why so few survive today, as they were often made of wood and other precious materials that deteriorated or were plundered.
And how could you tell a god from a human in their art?
Divine figures were visually distinguished by their greater size and, crucially, by horned headgear, like a helmet with divine figures or the human-headed winged lion, the lamassu, with its horned headdress. Horns were a clear sign of divinity.
So the horns were like a clear visual cue for divinity. What about other symbols that identified specific gods?
Specific divine attributes included a sun disk or rays for Shamash, the sun god and god of justice, a crescent moon for Sin, the moon god, and forked lightning or a bull for Adad, the storm god.
And materials mattered too, right? Gold, silver.
Yes, gold and silver, along with stones like lapis lazuli and carnelian, were believed to have magical or apotropaic properties, protective properties. These precious materials were used in ornaments like pendants and beads, where the gold emblems were literally believed to make the gods magically present.
Wow.
Rituals like the Namburbi ritual, performed after an earthquake to avert evil, were crucial as omens were seen as coded messages from the gods. Sometimes these enlivened cult statues even traveled between sanctuaries to express theological or political relationships between cities. It truly demonstrates a vibrant, active relationship with the divine.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how they made all this stuff. Section 3.5, materials and techniques. The craft of the ancients. From humble clay to gleaming gold, these ancient artisans were incredibly ingenious. They weren't just working with materials, they were transforming them into something truly special and often sacred. What does their mastery of materials tell us about their society?
Well, the profound insight here is how the available resources and the ability to acquire imported ones fundamentally shaped their artistic expression. The prestige value of imported stones or metals, combined with their mastery of complex techniques, speaks to a highly organized and technologically advanced society.
They were pioneers in technology.
Absolutely. The ancient Near East saw many early technological advances that shaped not only their art, but civilization itself. This is where metal casting was developed, where glass was invented, and where pottery reached incredible levels of sophistication. They chose materials not just for their aesthetic qualities like color and hardness, but also for their perceived magical or apotropaic properties: gold, silver, lapis lazuli, and carnelian, for example.
So the materials themselves had a kind of inherent power or meaning, like the horned headdress.
Absolutely. Clay was the most ubiquitous material in Mesopotamia due to its abundance. It was used for everything: figurines, plaques, the countless cuneiform tablets, and pottery. The potter's wheel, a monumental time-saving innovation, was introduced as early as the 4th millennium BC.
And stone.
Stone was also vital for sculpture, vessels, seals, and jewelry inlay. While local options like limestone, sandstone, and gypsum alabaster were available, harder, more prized stones like diorite, sourced from Oman or Iran, and gemstones like agate, carnelian, and lapis lazuli, imported from as far away as Afghanistan and India, were acquired at considerable expense, adding to their prestige value.
And they were pioneering metalworking, which is a huge leap in technology. What kind of techniques did they master?
Yes, the earliest use of metals and the development of metallurgy occurred right here. They mastered lost wax casting for both solid and hollow figures.
How does that work?
It involved forming a figure in wax, covering it with clay, heating it so the wax melted out, and then pouring molten metal into the mold. Very sophisticated. They worked with copper, iron, lead, gold from Nubia and Anatolia, and silver from Anatolia and western Iran. They also produced alloys like bronze, which required imported tin.
We've seen some examples already.
Yes. The kneeling bull we discussed earlier is an extraordinary example of early, solid cast silver sculpture. A gold vessel, terminated in the forepart of a leonine creatures, showcases masterful hammering and the intricate use of fine, twisted gold wires.
What about other durable materials that might surprise us? Ivory. Shell.
Yes. Durable animal products like ivory, sourced from elephants and hippos in Egypt and Syria, and shell from marine and freshwater mollusks also survive. Ivory plaques, often made from hippopotamus teeth and used as furniture supports like the sphinxes we mentioned, were combined with wood like ebony for luxurious furniture. The contrast between the dark wood and light ivory highlighted the richness. Shell was used for adornments, utensils, and inlays, especially the iridescent mother of pearl. And yes, glassmaking on a large scale began in the mid-2nd millennium BC, possibly developing from ceramic or metalworking traditions. It was used for beads and seals, although glass blowing wouldn't appear until the Roman period much later.
And building materials. Mostly mud brick.
Overwhelmingly. Mud bricks were the most characteristic building material in Mesopotamia, even preferred in Assyria where stone was available, perhaps due to long tradition and rituals where the ruler himself placed the first brick. Molded bricks, some famously glazed in vibrant colors like the panel with striding lion from Babylon's processional way, appeared later, providing both powerful visual impact and weather protection. bitumen, or tar, was also widely used as a sealant and adhesive. Their mastery over such a wide range of materials and techniques truly highlights their technological ingenuity and advanced society.
Absolutely incredible skill. Okay, let's broaden out again. Section 4. Society, economy, and governance. We touched on economics earlier, but let's look at economic foundations and social structures more closely. So, the ancient Near East wasn't just about farming. It was a hotbed of economic activity and social innovation. How did these early societies start to organize themselves on such a grand scale, leading to these specialized roles?
Yeah, the profound lesson here is that the development of specialized labor and complex social hierarchies with rulers and priests at the top was a direct outcome of agricultural surplus and the intrinsic needs of urban living. This foundational structure would go on to influence civilizations for thousands of years.
It all comes back to food surplus.
Fundamentally, yes. The fertility of Mesopotamia's environment was indeed critical. It allowed small villages to evolve into thriving urban centers with highly specialized full-time occupations: architects, scribes, craftspeople, and farmers, each contributing to a more complex society. With this urbanization, the foundational institutions of priesthood and kingship naturally emerged to manage the growing complexities.
And this led directly to the concept of city-states, each with its own leadership.
Yes. In the early 3rd millennium BC, southern Mesopotamia was organized into city-states. Each was led by a lugul, or big man, who served as both secular and religious leader, a fundamental concept of leadership that would endure for millennia.
The priest-king idea.
Right. The growing power and size of temple organizations were closely linked to the struggles for hegemony among these new cities and their desire to control access to coveted materials like metals, timber, and stones, which Mesopotamia lacked locally.
So even within cities, there were internal power struggles and tensions shaping their development. Between the temple and the palace, maybe.
Absolutely. There were constant intra-city tensions, forming what is described as a triangle of conflicting forces: temple, palace, city. These internal stresses were effective generators of change and development within Mesopotamian social structures.
And the Sumerians were key early on.
Very much so. The 3rd millennium BC is often called the Sumerian millennium, largely credited with establishing the normative intellectual, social, and technological formulations that defined the region for centuries. The economic conditions, as we discussed earlier, directly influenced the relationships between landowners and workers, with large capital investments often preferring date-growing or overland trading corporations due to the labor and security needed for cereal production. This combination of environmental factors, economic ingenuity, and evolving social structures laid the groundwork for complex civilization.
Okay, finally, let's look at law, order, and imperial dynamics. It's fascinating how these early civilizations tackled the challenges of governance, law, and managing vast territories. And it seems that even back then, art was a powerful tool for political messaging, helping to unify or legitimize rule.
Definitely. The profound implication here is that the interplay between political shifts and artistic styles is a hallmark of ancient Near Eastern art. It wasn't just about depicting power, it was about using art to reinforce political ideology, integrate diverse populations, and legitimize rule.
How did that play out over time?
Mesopotamia experienced a constant ebb and flow of regional control, with many groups rising to power. They created vast territorial states and empires that encompassed incredibly diverse ethnic groups, languages, and belief systems. And importantly, as new powers ascended, they often absorbed the practices and cultures of their predecessors, rather than simply obliterating them.
That's a key point. It wasn't just conquest, it was often a form of cultural synthesis, where traditions were adopted and adapted.
Exactly. Legal decisions, for example, were publicly recorded on monuments by kings, like Hammurabi's Code, which served as a public declaration of his just rule. The adaptation of writing systems to reflect phonetic sounds was crucial for communication among these different societies, often driven by the needs of trade.
And this integration shows up in the art.
Yes. We see this cultural integration reflected in their art. As the Akkadian Empire expanded, gaining access to exotic materials and diverse cultures, their art showed a greater interest in natural forms and movement.
And the Persians were particularly adept at this, weren't they? Incorporating diverse elements into their imperial identity.
Yes, the Achaemenid Persians, for instance, in their relief fragment of attendants carrying food from Persepolis. You see them intentionally depicting various peoples within their court, showcasing the empire's diverse constituents rather than just conquered enemies.
A powerful visual statement of inclusivity within their vast domain. like imperial branding.
Exactly. Even later, the Seleucid Empire, established by Alexander's generals after his conquests, adopted local practices and cults while introducing Greek language and architecture. This led to a unique hybrid culture. This cultural interaction is further seen in artifacts like the old Assyrian trading colony period tablet and seal we mentioned earlier, which demonstrates the blending of Mesopotamian and Anatolian cultural elements through trade.
And what about the deliberate destruction of art, like graven images in some traditions? Was that also a political act, a way to dismantle the authority of previous rulers or beliefs?
That's a crucial point. The destruction of power-laden images, or iconoclasm, is noted in the sources. The graven images, smashed by early Jewish patriarchs, for instance, could include a Canaanite enthroned deity like the one depicted in our sources. This act of destruction was not random. It was a powerful statement against the beliefs and authority these images embodied, often tied directly to the legitimacy of rival powers or religious systems.
So art was so deeply tied to political and religious legitimacy that its destruction was a means of undermining the very power it represented.
Precisely. Even independent caravan cities like Palmyra flourished due to their strategic position on trade routes, developing a uniquely hybrid Palmyrian culture, as evidenced in their monumental tombs, showcasing the dynamic nature of cultural exchange and adaptation in their governance.
Wow, what a journey. From the precise logistics of ancient farming to the intricate symbolism of their art, we've taken a true deep dive into the ancient Near East. We've seen how an unforgiving environment spurred incredible innovations like writing, how personal letters offer vivid glimpses into daily life, and how art served as a powerful language of kings, gods, and communities.
We've truly unpacked how a civilization's values and beliefs were etched not just into their texts, but into every crafted object, every architectural choice. The resilience, ingenuity, and cultural complexity of these ancient societies continue to resonate, laying foundations that still shape our world today.
The sources for our deep dive today mention that in the ancient Near East, many images were believed to be imbued with the actual essence and power of who or what they represented, capable of affecting change.
Which raises an important question for you, our listener. If ancient peoples believed art could possess such tangible power, to literally be the thing it represented, how does that perspective challenge or inform the way you view images, symbols, and even works of art in your own life today? What power do you believe an image holds?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration sparks your curiosity and encourages you to look at the past and even the present with a renewed sense of wonder. What stands out to you from our deep dive today?